Hey friends, Google just announced a new design language called
Material U.
You know, like you. I think that they finally understood that people perceived material design as like the really boring design system that makes all of the apps looks kinda ugly, kinda generic, and very much the same. This time, the design system is a little bit less strict and a lot more flexible.
Material can satisfy every need.
Because this time, it's not only about the strict rules of a design system, this time it's about you. And yeah, I guess me as well.
Design has made computers more helpful by making them easier to use. More personal.
Before we start, please keep in mind that my review of this is just first impression based on a beta. So this is subject to change, and I believe that a lot of the problems that I found or a lot of those little inconsistencies will likely be fixed in the final version. So let's dive in, shall we?
In 2014, we introduced material design to address the explosion of mobile phones. We believe this is a challenge for the whole industry. To acknowledge that emotion is essential and that beauty is personal. Instead of form following function, what if form followed feeling? Instead of Google Blue, we imagined Material U. A new design that includes you as a co-creator.
Looking at this first screen, we can notice those organic blobby shapes that I mentioned in many of my design trend predictions. People are slowly getting bored with forced minimalism, so these shapes are a fun way to have the best of both worlds. It definitely looks more playful and friendly now comparing to what Android used to look like, which is a good direction. Here we see a lot of screens that show how the OS is all about personalization. The main feature of taking the wallpaper dominant color and using it as the accent color of the entire system is pretty good and can lead to the OS changing each time you change the wallpaper. That reduces boredom and will make it slightly more exciting. Also notice that super thin and light fonts are almost completely gone here, replaced by medium, semi-bold and bold. This trend of heavier fonts is something that I mentioned as well, simply because they're easier to read and contrast better with the backgrounds. I am not a fan of merging shapes with different roundness though, and it is a bit chaotic and makes our brain process more information instead of less. We should always aim for less. There are pill buttons, slightly rounded buttons, oval buttons, irregular buttons and more. Some of these screens also are clearly mock-ups. As you can see, the action bar icon and label are sometimes badly aligned, like in those cases where the label is a little bit too high comparing to the center of the icon. The systemic approach also shows some buttons being more rounded than others, some almost sharp and some fully rounded. Also, the OK button and those action buttons are a little bit too close to the edge of the frame for my taste. The idea of having a primary and secondary color and use them throughout the system is good, although it can raise some accessibility issues as some of these buttons will probably not pass the WCAG guidelines for contrast. Another screen showing personalization from the photos, but this time the color combo is actually quite jarring. That highly saturated pink and yellow clash a little bit. I also don't understand why important action icons on buttons are so small. They practically disappear visually, also reducing accessibility. This is a bit of a better color choice, with more contrast to the important text and UI elements than the other one. I think the difficult part will be all about the right combinations from the wallpaper, so they're not jarring. After all, you don't have any control over what people use as their wallpaper. Here we see even more shapes, including a quite nice shape for the center avatar. But then we have a pill-shaped button, rounded button and an almost completely square search bar. That doesn't look too consistent, and that is just one screen. Most of the screen display a nice use of white space, while the list on the middle screen looks a bit tight and condensed. The lock screen is quite nice with the irregular widgets, but again, this won't make them easier to use because the white space between them will always be some random shape. And our brain has to follow that to find structure. It will be even clearer when someone decides to add 5 or 6 widgets to that screen and they're all gonna be irregular. Then it's just gonna be a chaotic mess. This set shows a more green theme, again coming from the background, and that looks nice, but some of the controls look quite small and out of place. Also, the inner border roundness of the screen on the left doesn't match the background drawer under it. Have you noticed that Google started using disclosure indicators? That's an iOS pattern, you know, those V-shaped kind of arrows on the right side of lists. Apparently the patents expired or something, as the bounce animation is also a lot closer to what Apple came up in 2007 than what it was on Android for a long time.
Isn't that cool? A little rubber banding up when I run off the edge.
That definitely looks better. But I also noticed that one slider at the top of the fourth screen is thick and likely comfortable to use, but the music progress slider is thin and looks completely different. Maybe it will expand on touch or something, but it does look weird, as nobody is touching the one at the top, right? The last screen I want to talk about is the location usage. It's good that Google is taking privacy more seriously, as it may convince more users to stay on Android instead of switching to iOS. But this screen looks a little bit odd with no title and a lot of that empty space above the location icon. For timelines, it's usually better to align the title, not all of the text, which here is the larger font, to the center of the colorful circles. And while we're at it, the icons inside those circles are a little bit too big. That's not enough white space. So here's my quick review of the beta, and I think that for a beta it's actually quite polished and it looks quite good. Most of the things that I've noticed are probably gonna be fixed or changed entirely. I'm a fan of those organic shapes, so I believe that this is definitely gonna make the OS a lot more friendly and a lot more approachable, because the previous one was, yeah, it was kinda meh. The difference between the corner radius of many different elements on the same screen, on the other hand, looks a little bit confusing and chaotic, so I hope that they are gonna remove that. Our brains love structure, and they also love when things are predictable, because it just makes it easier for the brain to process them. So going away from that and breaking that rule on purpose might not be the best idea. But yeah, overall I like it. So good job, Google. And that's it for today. Thanks for watching, like, subscribe, eat a sandwich, and I'm gonna see you guys in the next one. Cheers!
Personal.